117 people, men, women, and children. They traveled across a vast ocean, seeking a new life in a new world. They established a settlement, a foothold of the English Empire, and then they vanished. No bodies were ever found. No signs of a struggle. All that was left behind was a single, cryptic word carved into a wooden post, Croatoan. For over 400 years, this simple clue has been the epicenter of one of America's oldest, most haunting unsolved mysteries. This isn't just a ghost story. It's a real story about ambition, desperation, and survival. To understand what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke, we have to go back to the beginning, back to a time of empires and exploration. In the late 1500s, England, under Queen Elizabeth I, was desperate to catch up. Spain was gobbling up the New World, extracting immense wealth and power. Ambitious men like Sir Walter Raleigh saw North America as England's chance to claim its own piece of the pie. He sponsored expeditions to the coast of what is now North Carolina. The initial attempts were difficult. The first group, all men, barely survived, plagued by dwindling supplies and violent clashes with the local Native American tribes. They were eventually rescued, but Raleigh was not deterred. In 1587, he tried again, but this time, it would be different. This wasn't just a military outpost, it was meant to be a permanent English settlement. This new colony, led by a man named John White, included families, husbands and wives, sons and daughters. Among them was Governor White's own pregnant daughter, Eleanor Dare. Shortly after their arrival, she gave birth to a baby girl, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. She was a symbol of hope, a new beginning in a new land. But that hope was fragile. The colony was established late in the growing season, and their supplies were already dangerously low. Their relationship with the local tribes was tense from the start, colored by the violence of the previous English expeditions. They were isolated, thousands of miles from home, and they knew they wouldn't survive the winter without help. A difficult decision was made. Governor John White, an artist and mapmaker, not a sailor, would have to return to England to plead for a resupply mission. It was a perilous journey, but the colony's survival depended on it. He left his daughter, his granddaughter Virginia, and over 100 others behind. Before he left, they agreed on a signal. If the colonists had to move from the settlement for any reason, they would carve the name of their new location into a tree or post. As an added precaution, if they were in danger or had been forced to leave under duress, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name. With that somber agreement, White sailed away, promising to return as quickly as possible. He had no idea it would be 3 long years before he saw Roanoke Island again. Almost as soon as he arrived in England, his worst fears were realized. England was at war with Spain. The massive Spanish Armada was preparing to attack, and every available ship, including the ones meant for his resupply mission, were commandeered for the war effort. John White was trapped, helpless, his mind consumed with worry for the family and the people he had left behind across the ocean. Finally, in August of 1590, the war was over, and White managed to secure passage back to the New World. He arrived at Roanoke on August 18th, his granddaughter Virginia's 3rd birthday. As his ship approached the island, he saw smoke rising from the woods. He was hopeful, believing it was a signal from the colonists. But as his men rowed ashore, an eerie silence fell. They called out, but no one answered. The settlement was gone, but it wasn't destroyed. The houses had been carefully dismantled, the heavy materials taken away. It wasn't the scene of a battle or a frantic escape. There were no human remains, no skeletons, no graves. It was as if the entire colony had been neatly packed up and moved. Then, they found it. Carved into the wooden palisade that once protected the settlement was a single, clear word, Croatoan. On another tree nearby, they found the letters CRO. There was no Maltese cross. The signal of distress was missing. For John White, this wasn't a mystery. It was a message. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, what we call Hatteras Island today. It was also the name of the friendly tribe that inhabited it, a tribe whose chief, Manteo, had been a trusted ally of the English. To White, the message was clear. The colonists had moved to Croatoan Island to live with the friendly natives. He was relieved. They were alive. But his relief was short-lived. As they prepared to sail the short distance south to Croatoan, a powerful hurricane, a common threat on that coast, began to churn the waters. The storm was so violent it nearly wrecked their ships and forced the fleet's captain to abandon the search. His anchor cable had been cut, and he refused to risk his ships or his crew any further. Against White's desperate pleas, the captain turned the ships around and sailed away from Roanoke. John White would never return. He died years later, never knowing for certain the fate of his family. And so, the search fell to others, and the theories began. The most accepted theory, the one John White himself believed, is that the colonists assimilated, that they packed up their belongings and willingly went to live with the Croatoan people. Decades later, subsequent English settlers in Jamestown and other areas reported hearing stories from native tribes about people with light hair and eyes living among them, people who could read from a book. More recently, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina have passed down oral traditions for generations that they are the descendants of the Roanoke colonists, mixed with their own people. But there are other, darker possibilities. Some historians wonder if they were attacked, perhaps by the Spanish, who had a presence in Florida and saw the English colony as a threat, or perhaps by other, less friendly native tribes who had been antagonized by the previous English expeditions. But this theory has a major flaw: the scene itself. A violent attack would have left evidence, bodies, damage, signs of a fight, and the dismantled houses suggest an organized departure, not a panicked flight. Could they have tried to sail home? The colony had several small boats. It's possible they grew desperate, and a group attempted the impossible journey back to England, only to be lost in the vast, unforgiving Atlantic. Or perhaps disease and famine simply overwhelmed them before they could relocate. But again, this doesn't explain the lack of bodies or the carefully carved message. Every theory seems to have a piece of the puzzle, but none of them fit perfectly. For centuries, the story ended there. But recently, modern archaeology has added new clues. Using ground-penetrating radar, archaeologists have found evidence of a potential settlement site on Hatteras Island, the former Croatoan. They've also found English pottery from the 1500s mixed in with native artifacts at several sites, suggesting some level of cohabitation. The science seems to support John White's original belief. The Lost Colony of Roanoke is a story that stays with you. 117 people, including a little girl named Virginia, faced with an impossible situation. Perhaps they didn't vanish at all. Perhaps they simply adapted. They left a message, telling us not that they were lost, but where they had gone to survive. They chose a new community, a new family, and a new life. In the end, a story of Roanoke might not be a story about a mysterious disappearance, but a remarkable and very human story of survival.